Started, right? That should be it. All right. How many people do we have on virtual right now? Three. Three. All right. Hi, everyone. Can everyone see me? Nice having this many people away versus here, but it's all good. My name is Adam Kiliszek. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams, Philadelphia. I have been licensed for 17, almost 18 years, and it feels like an eternity. It's nuts. I got licensed in New Jersey back in like 2005 or 2006. So I've been doing New Jersey for an extremely long time, probably too long, to be honest with you, and then came over to Pennsylvania, I think like around 2015, 2016. So I'm one half of the Kiliszek team. We have an office in Northern New Jersey that does the majority of the deals in New Jersey. And then down here, we probably do anywhere from 10, maybe 20, sometimes 30 deals a year, depending upon if we sell, foreclosures or not. But we love New Jersey. We live and breathe it. It's pretty amazing over there. Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So that right there is this awesome state of New Jersey. It's sandwiched in between New York and Pennsylvania. So believe it or not, it's the most densely populated state in the United States. It's pretty nuts. It's a tiny little state. It's one of the smallest other than Delaware and Rhode Island. There is no new land to build on. Literally, like new construction, if it's other than a property that's already owned by somebody, there's no new lands. So literally the state either owns it and they're not selling off anything else. And they've been doing that since the early 2000s. So it's a very desirable state to get, just the land is super expensive. It's actually one of the top 5 richest states in the United States. So New York is #1, California is #2, Chicago, and then battles for Florida, believe it or not. Yeah, New Jersey is top 5. So taxes are pretty high. That means that property values in New Jersey based on salaries per year, top 5. So it's the land of opportunity over there. Edison, New Jersey, believe it or not, kind of sort of named after Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb right there. That northern part of that stinky state right there. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Bada boom. And my favorite, it's that natural breeding ground for the Venus flytrap. Do you know what a Venus flytrap is? It's the coolest plant in the world. It looks like that. It's a little shop of horrors. It's a tiny little plant, and it's a carnivore, and it eats flies. You would think it's a plant from another planet. It's on the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. Pretty nuts. Kind of another planet. It's like a barren wasteland of sand and lots of weird things. So I'll keep it pretty simple for you guys. That's Pennsylvania right there. And then that's New Jersey right there. And then those rainbows right there with pots of gold at the end of them. Consider those bridges. You just cross that bridge and there's pots of gold at the end of that land right there. Whether you go over the Betsy Ross, or the Walt Whit, or the Ben Frank, just look at those as big rainbows because there's money at the end of those things. So it's a great state. Yeah. So this contract right here probably looks very familiar. Has anybody in this room filled one out before? Yeah, no, anybody? Okay, cool. The cool thing about Pennsylvania and New Jersey is they're reciprocity states, right? They see eye to eye on many things, right? So if you do the national exam, you get licensed in PA or New Jersey first, but then you just take the state exam, you don't have to take both yet. Which the good news is the contracts are very similar. Most people kind of fumble on these things and they're like, whoa, what am I staring at? This is like a contract from another world. They're actually pretty simple. The first page and then part of the second page are ultimately what differentiates this contract from Pennsylvania, only because there's attorney review. Attorney review is probably the biggest part of New Jersey in general. I'll zoom in on this right here. Because if you look at the very top right here, it simply states the buyer and seller need to read this before signing the contract, right? And then it outlines that the law requires real estate brokers to give you the following information before signing this contract. It requires us to tell you that you must read all of it before you sign. The purpose is to help you purchase a home. The second part right here, all the way through almost the end of this contract, it will state, I think, 7 times, attorney or lawyer. Attorney or lawyer. This contract is, in my opinion, kind of loosely put together, and it's purposely loosely put together because an attorney is going to help the buyer and the seller ultimately understand it and define more outlines, and that's why there's an addendum with an attorney working through all that. So if you look right here, basically line 2, it says legal advice. Contract is most important. A lawyer, contract becomes final and binding unless your lawyer cancels it within the following 3 business days. Another part of the service of a lawyer, you stress lawyer again, is to order survey, title reports, and other important reports. That's pretty wide open, kind of vague in itself. You would expect something to be a little bit more defined and specific. The lawyer will review them and help to resolve any questions that may arise about the ownership and condition of the property. So as agents, we're not attorneys, we're not lawyers, we're not home inspectors, we're not appraisers. Lord knows we're not contractors unless you're licensed to do so. So we are agents, we know the market, we know it extremely well. We know how to market the house, we know the neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, when it comes to putting together a contract in the state of New Jersey, the state advises you to retain an attorney for attorney review. That's basically what that whole page said right there. And at the very end of it, line 6 right here, section 6, I should say, a buyer without a lawyer runs special risks. Only a lawyer can advise a buyer about what to do if problems arise concerning the purpose of this property. Problems may be about the seller's title, the size, shape of the property, or other matters that may affect the value of the property. Pretty straightforward. There's one part right here that's kind of a little bit hard. I kind of take offense to it, and everybody in this room kind of should, because it states in a piece of paper right here, it says, ordinarily, the broker and the title company have interest in seeing that the sale is completed, because only then do they even receive their commissions. That's rough. And every time I do this course, I really point that out. That's paper, that's crazy. The state of New Jersey and attorneys work together, put that there. So you have to explain that to all your buyers and sellers. I would choose choice words and explain to them that the state has told you to explain that. Wouldn't necessarily go over this last part right here because it kind of makes us look bad as title companies and realtors, but it just is what it is. And then lastly, whether you retain a lawyer is up to you. It is your decision. The purpose of this notice is to make sure that you have information needed to make your decision. Once you guys can understand that first page right there and part of the second page, it's a breeze. It's literally just like doing a Pennsylvania deal. If you guys have any questions at all, please just raise your hand and yell out. I have no problem stopping and answering. I love people just jumping right into it. And then, like I said, part of the second page, at the top of it, reads right here, this is a legally binding contract that will become final within 3 business days. During this period, you may choose to consult an attorney, again, an attorney who can review and cancel the contract. See section on attorney review, which you'll see there's actually an addendum that breaks down attorney review in here, additional provisions, addendas, applicable laws, all that's, it's literally right in front of you. All you have to do is just read the contract. So that being said, advise all of your buyers and your sellers to get an attorney. And if they don't have to. They're not legally obligated to do so, but they're heavily advised to do so. In Northern Jersey, I would say almost 80% of all deals are done with an attorney. That's a lot. When you come down to South Jersey, or even like all the way south and closer to KMA, it's probably less than 50%. Why? I don't know. That's just the customs down here. Northern New Jersey, they use way more super lock boxes. Like, I mean, like almost every lock box up there is a super. Down here, few and far. It's just normal combo. So there's just customary things between the state or north and south on top of many different MLS systems that they use. So scrolling through here, the first page is pretty much, it's simple and explanatory. It involves the parties, the property itself, the purchase price, the balance, the mortgage. That should all be pretty much straightforward. And again, every initial buyer side and seller side is at the bottom of every page. Initial deposits, a really good section to kind of go over right here because in Pennsylvania, we have a deposit notice, right? So there's an indent for that too on the Jersey side, but there's an extra box that says buyer's attorney, right? So you would have listing, participating, title company, those are normal. Buyer's attorney, again, if you're retaining an attorney, usually the attorney will retain it and then handle everything in an escrow and from there. The other parts, I don't know if you want to get to Ronald McDonald, I highly doubt you would do that, but if you have an estate or anything else weird like that, you can certainly do so. Additional deposits, if you wanted to put that down as a second, you can certainly do that there. Escrow, in all non-bearing interest accounts, I typically leave this area blank. The attorney will fill this out if they have to, but usually just filling out this area right there is all you really need to do. In Pennsylvania, there's more of an outline section when it comes to obtaining a mortgage. It's actually showing rates and lots of different, if there's a second mortgage or anything like that. Obtaining a mortgage, and more importantly, the mortgage commitment is just outlined right here. It's super simple. It gives the timeline, which is roughly 10 days from being out of attorney review to actually start the application. It will go through principal amounts, all the different mortgages, whether it's cash, you can always check other cash right here. And more importantly, you always want to fill this section out right here because you never want to leave that blank, especially when it's coming from the seller side. If that's left blank, it literally can be that the mortgage commitment can come in within 30 days, which that's a huge no-no. It's kind of like a big wide open gap. Typically with us on the PA side, we do about a week before closing, unless otherwise stated. So wherever the closing date would be, you want to put about a week before that right here. And the funny thing about New Jersey is there's no BFI, there's no buyer's financial information. That's like funny. Like there we go over there and laugh. So over here, there's literally just like a little section right here that says sufficient funds. That's it, there's no BFI. You don't even have to have your buyers fill it out. It literally says that the buyer represents that they have the funds in order to close. Want to stop? Cool. What's up? Delaware's the same. Pennsylvania, man, they're rough with us. So accurate disclosures of selling price, basically the buyers and sellers agree that the contract accurately reflects the gross sale price as indicated in section 2 of the contract. Simple as that. Items included in sales, so it actually drops down to the next page. That's everything that's included and excluded, whether it's personal property, you want to leave the dog, that's cool, washers and dryers. Dates and times for performance. This is a pretty big section right here, because it will kind of go over times of the essence. We have that, pretty much in our contracts over here too. So one, you have to work times of the essence. It'll basically state that attorney review is 3 days. Okay? An attorney review is not 3 counting days, it's 3 business days. So think of an attorney's office just like a title company. If you get a house under contract on Friday at 9 a.m., that's day 1. Right, and then it would essentially go over into the next week. So you would have Friday, then you would have Saturday, Sunday, then you would have Monday, and attorney review ends on that 3rd day, which is Tuesday. Anything other than that would be counting days. So there's a big difference there. Appraisers, home inspectors, typically what's up?
So when they do the 3 days, does that constitute days in the 24-hour period? So will that 3rd day, that Tuesday 9 a.m., does that roll into by Wednesday 9 a.m.?
Good question. The attorney will actually dictate that to the buyer and the seller. They'll actually put it. Sometimes I've seen end of day. Okay. They'll go end of day, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. I've seen people do 11:59 at night. It all depends upon how they structure that. And that's going to be up to the attorneys to do so. Other than that, so, you know, performance, times of the essence, stuff like that. Section line 131A, if a lender or the property owner requires that any addendum or other documents be signed for the property it owns in connection with the contract, final execution date, acknowledgement date, or similar language that sets up the time period for the completion of any conditions or contingencies, including but not limited to the inspections or financing, shall mean that the time will begin which run after attorney review period is completed. Right, so all the inspections, everything can get done right after attorney review. So it starts 10 days from there. Right? That's kind of where the times of the essence comes into play. Certificate of occupancy. So on the PA side, especially Philadelphia, we have UNOs. Right, UNOs are super easy to get. You go into the L&I system, or at least the Philly system. You push a bunch of buttons and then it just spits out a document for like $115 or every $20. Some counties outside have similar UNOs, whether it's Delco or even Montgomery County or Bucks. Jersey on that side, they have COs, and COs are kind of strict or extremely strict. Philadelphia is pretty lax in a lot of their UNOs. Delaware County, pretty aggressive with, you know, the quality of the house. Bucks County, especially lower Bucks, definitely. Montgomery County, because it's out in the suburbs a little bit more kind of loose. The CO is super important because you can't close without it, right? The title company is going to enforce that. The attorney will enforce that. Obtaining a CO varies from township to township, county to county. Could be anywhere from as little as $75, could be as much as $200, but more importantly, there is a price that is put in there in the event that you need to fix it up to complete a CO. Depends on the house. So if you've got a house that's worth $1 million and you've got to put fire extinguishers in there and you have to put smoke alarms and a lot of different things, you kind of want to cater that price right there if it's up to the buyer to actually do those items. It's customary for the seller to obtain the CO. We sell a lot of foreclosed bank-owned properties, which in order to get a CO can cost tens of thousands because they're absolute wrecks, right? So sometimes you can actually leave that blank. Property's not going to get a CO, you can get what's called a temporary CO, a CCO, right? If the township goes out there, they fail it instantaneously, but everybody knows that. They give the new owner roughly 60 to 90 days to complete all the work in order to get a new CO in order to habitat the house. If not, you have to get an extended CO. That happens quite a bit when you're selling properties that are in either rehab or maybe a failed CO and you're just running out of time, so you want to close, then you can move in afterwards. Any questions on that spot right there? I know it's a little tricky, but feel free to just jump in at any time. Municipal assessments, pretty straightforward. Happens quite a bit with HOA communities. So like, let's just say an HOA has an assessment imposed on a whole bunch of houses for painting everything or, you know, doing community grounds. The seller will either check they have been notified or they have not been notified, and then explain that a little bit later in the contracts. But basically the property should be free and clear of any municipal assessments and things, anything like that. Section right there covers quality and insurable title. Similar to PA, there's no difference right there. It should be delivered free and clear unless otherwise stated. If it's not, buyer and seller have the ability to mutually agree to terminate. Typically, attorneys will do that, and funds will be returned back to the buyer. And then simple, instead of us filling out RSA 3 or single family or whatever we have on the PA side, you literally just put it's either single family, multifamily, whatever the case may be, you just put it right there as a family dwelling unit there. Possession, occupancy, and tenancies. This is basically if you're buying a rental or if you're buying a duplex or something that has tenants inside of it. There is a separate addendum that you can always fill out, but it's super easy. You can just explain it right here: tenant's name, location, rent, security deposits, and for how long. If you're buying a house that's vacant, there's no tenants, simply just put that box up there that says not applicable. Lead-based paints. pretty straightforward. It's standard nationwide. So the lead-based paint addendum that you get, you always fill that out, even if there's not one available. You do your best just because you're going to need it in order to get your check at the end of the day, right? It's because compliance needs that stuff. So even though Jersey covers it here, you want to get that addendum signed separately. The lead warning is in this contract. So the buyers and the sellers actually get it twice, which is a nice little reminder. Inspection section right here. So this is kind of interesting because it's very wordy. It gives lots of timelines and lots of dates. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it gives basically a rundown of either the 7 or the 10 days that a buyer, sometimes even 14 days that a buyer can get a home inspection. And then the time you respond to a home inspection, the seller has X amount of days to actually review that, and either decide to make repairs, terminate the deal, or to come to a conclusion with the buyer and figure out how they want to move forward. If you retain an attorney, the attorney will truncate this whole thing into a very simple timeline, and once attorney review is over, take this kind of long, exaggerated mess and just put into bullet points, and then that gets accepted. But it's self-explanatory, not a whole lot different than Pennsylvania. It's just extremely worded and strange. Does anybody know what a point of entry treatment system is? I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. I thought it was just like something you wrote down on a piece of paper like a poet. It's actually, so it's a point of entry treatment system is for the water that comes into the house. It's always good to explain that to all your clients, because the reality is most people have public water nowadays. Some people are actually still in a well. A lot of people are actually still in a well when you start getting out into the land, out into the suburbs a little bit. You have your own well, you have your own septic system. If you have a water filtration system, it's either applicable or not applicable. The state of New Jersey imposed this whole program to filter the water because they found that many of the wells were contaminated. And that well system right there, the filter is not a water softening kit. It's completely different. So you have a water softener, and then you have a point of entry treatment system, which involves high-end filters, ultraviolet rays, because not only do you drink the water, you can bathe in it, and you can also wash dishes with it and stuff like that. So it's either applicable or not. Cesspools, kind of a rarity you'll find one, but back in the day before they had septic systems and outhouses and stuff like that, they literally had cesspools. Cesspools were banned. If you have one, it should be remediated, meaning they basically just fill it in, and the township has to come out and actually improve it. I've never found a cesspool in my property in New Jersey. That goes back to many, like 150 years ago. The only cesspool I've ever run into, believe it or not, is actually in Pennsylvania, in Germantown, where I live. Someone had it in the front yard, pretty nuts, on these old houses. So if it is applicable, then you have a whole process of understanding that you have to remediate it. It's maybe the seller agrees to either remediate the process, the buyer agrees to remediate it, and it says at its sole cost and expense. Seller agrees prior to closing at its sole cost and expense. So if there is a cesspool in your property in New Jersey, seller takes care of it or buyer takes care of it. And then a little bit more, kind of going back to the home inspection contingency clause, responsibility of the homeowner. Once you get the house under contract, the homeowner, you have to like keep the house clean. Like literally can't just let it go and like see you later. Shutting off the utilities, have fun. The state of New Jersey actually said that the homeowner has to keep the house in decent shape. They have to keep the utilities on, water running, so the buyer can come in and test and do everything they need to do, unless otherwise stated. So if you're selling a house that's just vacant and no lights on, sold as is, that's technically not applicable right there. But there's addendums to do so, and actually in the last page of this spring sale. There's a whole section of filling that stuff out. Radon testing, exact same thing as Pennsylvania, no difference at all. Is go over here to wood boring insects. It's basically WDI termite inspection, attorneys, and again, it's just right here, attorney review period. They will try and cut this period down as short as possible. They actually give a standard 14 days to do most inspections, but attorneys just want to wrap it up very quickly. You don't want that extended period of time to do all your inspections, because things could actually go worse if they find other things out. So, you know, they'll typically try and cut this down to 7 days or maybe 10 days there. And then by doing so, if you have to cure any part of the house that has termites, it will actually go over the 1% rule and give you a 7-day period to actually do the termite remediation. And then the buyer's rights to inspection. Yeah, hi, what's up?
So this is the part of the contract I actually struggle with, because I have a hard time saying for inspections fall under that unilateral regulation.
Yep.
So could you go over that?
Yeah, sure. So again, if you retain an attorney, the attorney will actually structure that. Cool, awesome. Me too. Same with you. Treat it just like a Pennsylvania deal, right? So attorney review is 3 business days. If there's no attorney review, then you literally want to start with the day that the contract was signed, right? And then if home inspection is set for 10 days, that means that in 10 days, you would have home inspection, you would have all of your inspections done. They don't have to go in any certain order. Typically, a home inspector comes out, they do termite, they do home inspection, they'll do radon if they have to, depending upon if the buyer wants to do that. Well and septic are sometimes the home inspector will do that too. Sometimes they will not, they will go to another company. If you have to do all of those inspections, 10 days might be a little tough. So you actually want to push it out further, right? Maybe get 14 days. If there's a holiday, maybe even 2 to 3 weeks. It's a catch-22 when you bring the attorneys in, because they really structure things. They want to like have it done in the quickest amount of time. While that's going on, you really can't do any inspections, right? So I've seen attorney review get drug out even longer, because 3 days can turn into 5 days, can turn into 2 weeks. And then if you can't come to a conclusion, then you have to take the closing and then actually extend it further, right? So that being said, it kind of goes on a normal timeline, just treat it like a Pennsylvania deal, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's meant to set live, right?
I'm sorry, what?
It's not extended for the set for the block.
Yep, yeah, just follow the exacts. I mean, it could be even less, right? It's like, I try to structure all my deals similar to PA, where reply is within 24 hours, 48 hours, unless we have to get a contractor out there, or if an appraiser messes up on something, the appraiser has to come back and do stuff. You want to reply right away and then give yourself as much time as a buffer to get those things done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool, got it. Yep. And then so buyer's rights to inspection, basically broken down right there. Responsibility to cure kind of goes off of what you were talking about right there, where it gives you extra days and timelines. Say the seller has to fix something, right? And there's no time to discuss. Then the state of New Jersey says that 7 business days after receipt of such reports to notify the buyer in writing that the seller shall correct or cure any of the defects set forth in such reports. That's like standard timing right there. And then afterwards, the buyer actually has time to respond to that too, which drags out even longer. That's why the attorneys, if you retain them, they structure it, they make it all nice and neat. If they don't do that, then you're here right now. It's all written in plain language. It's pretty easy to understand. Flood area, it's the same as it is anywhere else. If you're not sure, always look up the FEMA map. Never trust what you see in MLS, because that's kind of correct, but not always. Megan's Law is Megan's Law. I need to explain that. You go on a website, I can basically just show you a bunch of photos of people. Notification regarding offsite conditions. I don't know if anybody has ever explained that. That's a very unique one, because right below it, it says air safety and zoning notice. I don't know how many people own a house by the airport, Could be loud and noisy, right? It could be high traffic. You could be like, why did I buy this house? This is nuts. Airports are one thing. Notice regarding offsite conditions is basically like, it literally tells the buyer. It says that the buyer needs to become familiar with the area that the buyer buys in. So they don't buy a house and realize that there's a chemical waste plant 3 blocks away from them. They want to make sure that there's no dumping grounds that the buyer is not aware of. It's up to the buyer to do that reconnaissance and research. It's not up to the seller. So offsite conditions that affect the house's resale value. Right? Buyers may examine the lists that are encouraged to independently investigate the area surrounding this property in order to become familiar with any offsite conditions. Now, they don't say chemical waste plants. They don't say dumping grounds. They don't say, cemeteries, anything like that at all. They just say offsite conditions that could butt up to your property, which may affect the value of the property in cases where a property is located near the border of the municipality. Buyer may wish to also examine the list maintained at neighboring municipalities. So you can always go to the municipality that you're buying in, look up the list of where dump zones are, safety, storage. A lot of like PennDOT will have buildings set aside where they just have dump trucks. There's just loud noises and stuff like that. So you can literally just find out that information. Right below that is air safety, which basically outlines every major airport, every private airport that's registered with the state of New Jersey. So you want to buy near an airport? Cool. If you don't, look that up. It's literally right there. Apparently someone did years ago. Bulk sales. So I kind of struggle with this myself sometimes. I stay very surface on this one because bulk sales by law involves the taxation of New Jersey when you purchase a house, right? Now, if you retain an attorney, the attorney and the title company, they'll actually handle all of the proceeds for you as far as what the state of New Jersey pays for taxes, right? Or at least what the buyer and the seller do for transfer tax. When you start buying more than one house, maybe someone buys a package with 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 houses, you're going to pay that tax, but not on one closing, but on all the closings, right? So you're buying houses in bulk. Think about it that way. The law does not apply to the sale of simple dwelling houses or the sale or lease of a seasonal rental property. If seller is an individual, estate, or trust, simple dwelling house is a 1 or 2 family dwelling building or a cooperative or condominium unit used as a residential dwelling. So if you're buying a multifamily, a big building, or a bunch of different buildings, there's just a different taxation that goes with it, right? So it's kind of bulk sales in a nutshell. I highly suggest either reaching out to a CPA in New Jersey. I do all the time. That's just kind of just a very brief way of understanding that. But that's just bulk sale in a nutshell. And it goes on more about just closing costs, taxes, and held in escrow. Section 22, notice to buyer concerning insurance. Believe it or not, just like Pennsylvania and Delaware and New York, people don't think that they always have to get insurance on their house. If you get a mortgage on a house, you need insurance, right? But if you buy it cash, you don't necessarily need to have insurance on the house. State of New Jersey tells you, no, dude, insurance on that thing. There's an outliner right there. Maintenance and condition of the property. So going back to the inspection contingency clause where the seller actually has to maintain the house. Seller agrees to maintain the grounds, buildings, and improvements in good condition, subject to ordinary wear and tear. The premises shall be in room, clean condition, free and debris and all that good stuff. Sellers, to the best of sellers' knowledge, there are currently no leaks or seepage in the roof, walls, or basements. That's given to the home inspector to decide in the home inspection. Hopefully, the seller is honest and true and has filled out the seller's disclosure of property, seller's disclosure of the property correctly. Seller does not guarantee the continuing condition of the premises as set forth in this condition after closing. That's a pretty big one, right? It's that kind of goes it's directed mainly towards the buyer, saying that you got a home inspection, you did all the due diligence in order to purchase this house. Afterwards, if something happens, the seller is more than likely not aware of it. Now, in this day and age, that means absolutely nothing, right? Because you have an attorney and sue afterwards if something was negligent or found in fault. But that's the state of New Jersey basically covering simple concepts as far as the condition of the property. Risk of loss, so the risk of loss or damage to the property by fire or otherwise, except ordinary wear and tear is the responsibility of the seller until closing. Seller's just gonna take care of the house. Simple, okay? Right there for 497, section 25, buyer is obligated to do walkthroughs, right? They have to. Sometimes the agent will do it for them. I always suggest having the buyer walk the property. There are sometimes buyers are like, I'm cool. Walk that property, because I've walked it many times for people that found issues right before closing. This big section right here for adjustments at closing, I am not going to go too deep into it. This is typically for the attorneys and the title companies. It's basically just prorated taxes, right? Like transfer taxes. Originally, you do a buyer's estimated closing cost, and it comes out to one price, and then maybe the closing gets delayed 2 or 3 days, maybe a week or whatever. Obviously, those prices are going to change. It's prorated. That section right there basically covers all that stuff. If the property is used or enjoyed by not more than 4 families, the purchase price exceeds $1 million. This is a pretty big one, because we've sold $1 million properties in the past. Then pursuant of New Jersey state law 46-1572, blah, 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 buyer will be solely responsible for payment of the fee due for the transfer tax on the property, which is so-called, there's a mansion tax in New Jersey. So if you're buying a house that's $1 million, the amount is 1% of the purchase price. You gotta pay more. Welcome to New Jersey. But if you think about it in Philly, or even most parts, you're paying 2.14% for one side anyway. That could be on a $300,000 house. So it's actually still not that bad in New Jersey. There's other sections. If the seller is a foreign person, individual corporation or entity, under foreign investments or real estate, they have to fill out a few documents with the state of New Jersey for exemptions and so forth. Failure or buyer or seller to close. Now, this one right here is pretty self-explanatory. The attorneys, if you do retain one, which so it's suggested you do, they're going to outline what happens in the event of termination. Buyer will get X amount of dollars back. If the buyer agrees to a non-refundable deposit because there's multiple offers on it or some other circumstances that say so, they'll do that. But if not, the state of New Jersey has set aside a basic structure of how the buyer and seller fail to close, which basically means that the buyer will get their funds back as long as it's agreeable. Certain timelines are respected. If the buyer fails to close title in accordance with this contract, seller then may commence an action for damages it has suffered, and in such case, the deposit money paid on accounts of the purchase price shall be applied against such damages. Now, as long as your time is of the essence, is in check, and you've done everything in your power to make this deal go according to plan, I don't really see that ever going into place, but nothing's impossible, right? So you always want to make sure you follow your timelines, retain an attorney, because the attorney will definitely help in getting that deposit check back. Consumer information, the statements, similar to Pennsylvania, basically outlines who you are as an agent and your duties to your clients. Declaration of brokers business relationships. So for us, we have something similar in Pennsylvania. We have a whole document that outlines all that. Here it's basically integrated into the agreement of sale for New Jersey. You can, disclose who you are as far as buyer, seller, dual agent, transactional agents. I'm pretty certain in this office, we do not do transactional agents, right? So we can just X that out completely. So you have essentially 3 options. Always list the firm right here and who's doing what. New Jersey, I'm drawing a blank right now if there's a commission statement or at least an addendum that states, you know, what brokerages co-op together. I haven't used one in a while. I'm sure there is, or at least you can do one. But it basically just states the commissions right here. So commission side for buyer side, commission side for seller side, and it's all kind of outlines. I always suggest that all agents fill this out as clear as possible. Try not to leave anything out, especially brokers, license numbers and agents numbers, because it just helps the title company just so much more efficiently do stuff. Okay, cool. Equitable lien. So again, pretty straightforward. New Jersey law, the brokers who bring the parties together in a real estate transaction are entitled to an equitable lien in the amount of their commission. Right, so it kind of breaks down commission right there. The lien attaches the property being sold from when the contract of sale is signed for the closing and then to the funds due to the seller at closing, and is not contingent upon the notice provided in section. That's straightforward. As a result of this lien, the party who disperses the funds at closing, which will be title company or attorney, there are two people who handle that stuff. Closing and transaction should not release any portion of the commission to any party other than the brokers. Broker pays anyone else. And if there's a dispute with regard to commissions to be paid, should hold the disputed amount in escrow until the dispute with brokers is resolved. Pretty simple. Your broker is the only person that pays you, right? So you don't get the checks yourself. And if there's any disputes, well, then you have to get the broker involved and get the title and attorney to figure that out. Happens a lot. And sometimes it's off by a few pennies. I've done deals where it was off by thousands. Disclosure that the buyer and seller is a real estate licensed agent. You have to disclose that stuff. A lot of people are doing flips nowadays, so that agent is typically a flip who's buying it, having their crew do it. So in Pennsylvania, literally disclose right on the listing agreement, you do it in the private notes, and even on the agreement of sale. Same thing right here. Brokers should receive closing disclosure and other documents. Lender will do that along with title or attorney, and it basically breaks down all the figures before attorney review and after. Professional referrals, self-explanatory. Attorney review clauses. So this kind of, it breaks down, this is a section right here where it breaks down attorney review and kind of like defines the essentials of it. So study by attorney, one who's an attorney, and it breaks down 3-day period right there. And then counting time versus you know, business days and stuff like that. So no. 3 days of counting. You do not count Saturdays and Sundays. Literally just states it right there. Notice of disapproval. So when you disapprove of attorney review, and I've actually done it myself. I have a couple of deals where my buyers or sellers are super experienced. They're like, I don't need an attorney. I get it. It's my job to disapprove. And I've had attorneys send me lengthy emails that would just take all day to respond. I can literally respond back with, we disapprove of attorney review, and you can end it just like that. It's kind of like an open way of just saying, no, you can go through the documents if you want and say, we approve of this, we disapprove of this. Again, I highly urge you guys to obtain an attorney and get lawyer clients to do so, but I've done a lot of deals without it, and it's all plain language. You can disapprove of anything you want. And it literally says you can disapprove of anything. You're not obligated to approve anything. No assignments. Assignments are assignments. Does anybody have questions with that? Assignment deals, cool. There you go. Electronic signatures and documents. There's actually a clause in there that says that we can sign documents digitally. Thank God. I go back to the days of actually faxing and writing stuff. Wow, that's awesome. Love it. Corporate resolutions. If the buyer and seller is a corporate or other entity, the person signing below on behalf of the entity, that all required corporation resolutions have been duly approved, right? So that means if they're an LLC, some sort of formation, the person signing has to be on that LLC charter, or at least a person approved to do so. I've done a lot of closings where the person signs, instead of their name, they sign house, building, property, LLC, that's not how you sign a company. It actually has to be the person's name, right? And then that person's name has to be on the company charter, at least ledger to get that thing approved. Title and the attorney should catch that stuff right away. Entire agreement, parties liable. It's pretty self-explanatory right there. You're liable once you get into this contract, whether you're a buyer, seller, agent, attorney, and so forth. And then applicable laws, the contract shall be governed by, issued in accordance with the laws of New Jersey, and any lawsuit relating to this contract or underlying transaction shall be venued in the state of New Jersey. You can't do it anywhere else. You can't go to Delaware and do this. It has to be reviewed by the board of New Jersey. Anything is done in the state of New Jersey. And then this awesome section at the end right here, this is the addenda. This is pretty important because this is where you put a lot of extra provisions. I've seen this absolutely just filled with like mumbo jumbo crazy, right? Now you can get separate addendums to do everything as far as home inspection, appraisal, escalation clauses, all that stuff. It's advice to do so. I've seen a lot of people literally just throw it right in here. So you have the normal addendums for lead-based painting, construction, short sales, underground fuel tanks. So that's a wonderful conversation we can talk about later on if anybody's questions about that. But if you're doing anything as far as extra stuff, you want to waive appraisals, you want to give away your third child in order to get the house, you can really put it right here. And then everything is signed off. That's basically all I have. Is there any questions other than what a Venus flytrap is? Got that? Solid. Okay. Do not fear New Jersey. New Jersey is awesome. Many people freak out and they're like, what is going on over there? I go over to New Jersey and people say the same thing about PA when I go over there, and they're actually very similar. Taxes in New Jersey are pretty high, but so are they in Bucks County, Montgomery County. What's up?
So I know this is going to outside of the scope of the contract. Can you talk a little about the New Jersey proposal of purchase?
Great.
Because that's, I know for EA, most of the time they're just submitting an agreement of sale.
Yeah. Yeah, so proposal is customary. I should have talked about that from the beginning. I apologize, I did it all last time. Proposal to purchase is done as a customary measure when you first submit an offer. It's actually customary for the list agent to fill out this whole contract right here, right? So in Pennsylvania, or I'm not sure how Delaware works, usually the buyers or the buyer's processor is just typing all this up and sending it over. The listing agent actually types all this up for you guys. The proposal is what outlines all the basic stuff. That proposal should come over with proof of funds, and if accepted, then you guys work on this. We just came out of a crazy pandemic where houses were flying left and right. People were offering crazy offers, waiving all sorts of stuff. Our office was actually sending proposals with filled out agreement of sales just to make it easy on the seller side. Like we were doing the work for them. I highly suggest doing that, and in order to get paid in commands through your documents needed, you need a proposal with proof of funds, or at least proposal. That makes sense. Yep, so fill it out. So yeah. Appreciate it. All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Later. Call me with any independent questions and do it all. Keep it very brief. This thing gets super wordy.
Looks like there may be a question to the chat. So Nicole, yeah, the 10 days for the inspection will start after the attorney review period.
Correct.
As far as the question about getting a copy of the New Jersey contract, officially what I have to tell you is you have to be a member of a New Jersey board in order to get the standard New Jersey docs.
Correct. Yes, you do.
We got yelled at, so we had to take them down. We had them on our dashboard.
Yes, you did. So typically, the documents that we have uploaded in the system right now are suffice. Again, if you retain an attorney, attorneys oftentimes have the new documents, they can always give it to you. my expansion team up north versus down south, I have all those documents readily available for New Jersey because we do a ton of deals in New Jersey. So I can always just grab those and use them for myself. Yes, you do have to be a member of the board. Correct.
Great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate this.
10:30 show and 4:30 show.
We're gonna be about 2 minutes and then we're gonna get started with Matt Milano and his How I Grew. It doesn't have to be just this.
Like an elevator a little bit, so purposes of the video.
The stools from up there, and I'm not like, I think he's still important.
Just both schools.
Give him a comfy chair. I know. Very keyboard action standards. Any of those more better. I feel it's fine. I mean, I feel it's fine, just because I don't think.
It's not that big. So. It makes me want.
All right. We're up to 5 on Zoom.
Perpetual struggle then.
So,
Getting people to come.
All right.
right there, you get the company chair.
Sure.
All right, guys, well, thank you for coming out for the How I Grew section. Gonna this week be interviewing Matt Milano, it's with TCS Group. But you know, Matt, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about who you are, you know, what your production is, you know, what brings you here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Milano. I work for the TCS Group team. We've been in real estate probably around 15, 16 years now. My production in the last 12 months was between 9 to 10 million. I have currently 26 million in listings. And I have about 8 million under contract as of today, year to date. So I'm doing pretty well.
I'd say so. Talk about your journey getting into real estate. You know, what got you interested in real estate in the first place?
So the neighborhood I grew up in, there was a lot of real estate guys and contractors. One of my best friends was owned a real estate company, and we used to rehab houses with him. Like my summer job was rehabbing houses with him in the summer, and we lived, you know, little by little with him. And he had the nicest car in the neighborhood, so I figured whoever has the nicest car in the neighborhood, that's what I want to do. So that's really you know, my initial influence. You know, I was just really interested in buying and selling properties, and it just kind of grew from there.
What was the biggest motivator for you in growing your business? Because obviously you don't get to the level of production that you're at without something that's driving you to do that.
I guess my biggest motivator was just financial freedom. I didn't want to be tied down to a job from 9 to 5 where I had to be in office every day and have to answer to a boss every day for a particular thing, or I just wanted to have that freedom to where I could set my own schedule and kind of do my own thing.
Absolutely. What tools did you find most useful in helping you get to where you are?
I would say relationships. Relationships are probably the #1 thing that have gotten me to where I am today. Just leveraging a lot. So I started out doing mortgages. So from the mortgage business, I created a lot of relationships in finance that I carried over into what my business is now.
But what setbacks did you face, especially when you just got started? You know, we have, you know, a couple brand new agents in the room, at least a couple on Zoom, you know, and for every success story, there's, you know, at least a couple setbacks that you overcame to get there.
I would say just, you know, when you're first starting out, again, it's just finding the people in your circle of influence. A lot of people say that, but if you really tap into it and let people know what you're doing, there's always going to be someone that's going to reach out to you and give you the opportunity. You know, and really to capitalize on an opportunity is, you know, your first time, your second time is really going to set the stage of how you're going to conduct your business and stuff like that. It's just marketing yourself, getting yourself out there, you know, getting comfortable with what you're doing, stuff like that.
You know, you mentioned being on TCS Group. What was it like deciding that you wanted to join a team, and what drew you to being a team agent versus a solo agent?
I guess, you know, coming onto a team, or why I wanted to join a team, I wanted to be around people that knew more than I did. I wanted to be around people that had more influence than I did instead. You know, I went right for it. I went for a big project right out of the gate, because I had the finance experience. So where one of my first projects was a 15-town home community. So in order to have, you know, you take on something like that, you need an assistant, or you need, you know, you need a lot of people behind you to know what they're doing to kind of help you along to that point. So being on a team like that, having different resources was very helpful for me.
Well, and I would say that, you know, at least from an outsider's perspective, at this point, you are, you know, one of the leaders on the team. You know, what challenges have you faced, you know, being such a high producing agent, being a leader on a team, you know, now that you've achieved, you know, what I think everyone would call success, you know, what setbacks do you now face in your success?
Trying to produce every year the same or better than you did last year. That's your biggest challenge. You do 10 or 15 million one year, it's really challenging to keep that going to the next year. You're always looking for who's your next client, who's your next deal, so you know, on those lines to where you really have to keep moving. You have to keep bringing in new business every month.
That level of production, do you find, you know, do you find more success with new lead generation, or is it more prospecting the people and the relationships you've already had?
I prospect a lot of the people that I have relationships with, and I think it's like an even split, where you're always trying to bring in new clients, but you always want to follow up with previous clients, because I get a lot of referrals from that, from previous clients. So I would say like 75% of my business is referrals, and 20 to 30% would be new clients.
What would you say is the most useful piece of advice anyone ever gave you in your real estate career?
So when I was in the mortgage business, I had a closing with Mike McCain. And I was sitting across from him, and I'm thinking, this guy's one of the top agents, or the top agent in Philadelphia. Here's my chance. So I asked him, I said, how did you get started? What's your biggest, you know, how are you so successful? And he said, I started investing in real estate very early. And I only purchased a home, kept it for a rental, and just kept repeating. Bought something in a good neighborhood, rented it, and kept it. Never sold anything. So that was my mindset, to where now when we develop a lot of complexes where it's 20 units, or it's 15 homes, or it's 10 homes, I try to keep one in every complex that we build now as an investment for myself and my family.
I like that. What would you say was the biggest failure of your career, and what did you learn from it?
So I had a big project a few years back, where we were $1 million homes. I was the listing agent for it. I had a client call me directly on a $1.7 million home. They had no real estate agent. They came in, they asked for a lot of extras and this and that. I'm figuring, all right, get both sides. I'm going to give you something, whatever, you know, a little bit here and there. My sellers did not want to approve all the extras. So I wound up, you know, negotiating something to get her where she wants. And, you know, in that interim, she wound up talking to her other realtor and wound up going to look at like a high-rise condo instead of a town. So I didn't have anything signed with her. I didn't have a buyer's agreement signed with her. She wound up going and purchasing another condo, and I lost a $90,000 commission. So make sure you get your buyers. You're working with a buyer, make sure you have something signed saying you represent them.
Well, that's a good point. You know, we hear a lot of agents of all different experience levels and production levels talk about their fear behind having that conversation.
Have it. It's worth it.
What do you
It's
do?
worth it to have it instead of not having it signed later.
What do you do to start that conversation and to set the right tone for that conversation?
So what I usually do is, you know, I usually sit down and I interview them and find out what exactly they want and how much time is we're going to actually spend on something like this. And if you're going to spend time with someone, you want to be compensated for your time. Time is money in this business. So I usually, I try to tell them, we're gonna go around, I'm gonna show you homes. I need to, I need you to know that you're going to, be my client moving forward, but we're going to have a relationship moving forward. And I would say this is something we can have to have some. Love that.
Where do you see yourself in your business in 5 years?
So for the last 5 years, I've done a lot of new construction projects. And I've always tried to keep one unit each one of these. Over the last 5 years, I've accumulated probably 5 to 7 properties where I have those now to where they're bringing in rental income. In the next 5 years, I'm trying to do bigger projects now. I'm looking for bigger apartment buildings where it's like 50 units, 100 units. Anything where we could do, residual income for future. I have 2 kids now, so I'm really looking for the future to where, how do I, in another 5 to 10 years, I'm not out there showing properties every day. Even though I really like to do it, I'm on the listing side, so it's a lot different for me. But on the buyer side, it's difficult when you're out there and you're showing people properties at 6, 7 o'clock at night. You want to be in a position as you get older to where you're not having to do that.
That actually leads me to the next thing I was going to ask you about. You mentioned your 2 kids. I got to meet with your daughters at the softball event we had last year. And just being Facebook friends with you, it's pretty easy to tell that family is very important to you. How do you balance producing at the level that you do with, being a husband, being a father, having that be such an important part of your life?
I have a really successful wife that has a very good job that allows me to, take the risks and actually be out there. You have to have a yin and a yang. So I have a really good balance of, she'll take the kids to school in the morning. I'll pick up the kids at 3 o'clock. So I try to do all my appointments and all my stuff between 9 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So that's really my day. I try to get everything done between 9 and 2. But there's certain nights where I have 5 $2 million listings right now. Those type of buyers do not come and look at houses in the middle of the day. They want to see houses at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, on a Friday night, on a Saturday, on a Sunday. That's what you have to do. You have to find a balance there of how do you balance that with your children and your wife. It's not easy, but I have a really good balance. So I'm very fortunate.
Beautiful. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Never sell real estate, always buy and hold.
I like that. That's advice I wish I could give my 20-year-old self. So when I first started, I used to go to the sheriff's sale every month and I would purchase properties at the sheriff's sale. And I would sell them and I would make some really good money. I wish I would have kept maybe 50% of some of the homes that I sold. I've sold a lot of homes where I made $30,000 in a week, $40,000 in 1 week on 2 homes. And I was like, wow, this is great. Some of those homes that I sold are worth $200,000 or more today. What is your best source of leverage in your business that helps you maintain the production that you do?
I think coming from a finance background and a mortgage background, I was able to bring that key component to a lot of development deals for developers that couldn't get financing from banks, where I had a lot of relationships with banks. That's what really got me to where I leveraged to where I was able to get a big project right away, because they weren't able to get financing from them. So I was securing the financing and getting the lead and getting all the listings from them.
Working with all the developers that you do, and all the large projects that you do, I know there's a lot of agents who would love to get into larger deals or into the commercial space, but just don't know how to break into those spaces. What advice would you give someone who's looking to build those relationships and kind of get into those rooms?
So the way I started with that was I purchased a new construction home and I became friends with the builder. So it's not easy to get into that space. I purchased maybe 2 or 3 in a span of like 6 years. So I've met a couple of developers that way. That was how I got into it. So where I purchased one of my first new constructions and I met the builder and we went through everything and everything was good. But through the process, he wasn't happy with the people that were working for him. So I started taking them lunch. I started asking questions. And that's really how I got started with doing development. I started with one builder, and I just went out there and found the deals. Like I said, I used to go to the sheriff's sale a lot. So I knew a lot of people in that world, to where I would go out there, would find the deals and bring them to him, and then he would get them approved, and I would get the financing for them. So we had a good yin and yang. You need to offer value to any clients or any developers. If you show value, they'll give you an opportunity. So if you're bringing a deal to a developer, they're gonna value that, especially if you know what you're talking about. You only have to know everything from the plans, the financing, the numbers. You have to know every aspect of that. If you show value, they'll give you an opportunity. Then if you capitalize on that opportunity, you're going to get a number. You got to make sure you capitalize on the opportunities you have.
What do you look for when you're looking for deals to bring to these developers and these builders?
I mean, obviously, we're looking for something where it makes sense for an investor or a developer, to where they're going to invest their money and they're going to get a good rate on their return of their investment. And obviously, we're looking for location for the sake. But there's a lot of development in neighborhoods that are, just up and coming. So it's really hard. I mean, I've done a lot of driving around Philadelphia neighborhoods that I didn't know. So where I've built, multiple projects in Brewery Town, where I really didn't know too much about Brewery Town until 5 years ago. I always did a lot of, South Philly stuff.
How would you say it's different, or is it different, prospecting past clients that are residential versus, trying to get referrals from your previous builders and investors and things like that? Do you communicate with them differently? Is that conversation of trying to get referrals any different?
I mean, whenever, like I said, a lot of my business now is referrals. I do get, people that are just cold calls that come across my desk for emails, or something we have for Zillow or Realtor.com. So where I'll reach out to them. I'm an expert in Philadelphia. I've been doing this a long time, so I have a lot of confidence. For people that are just starting out, do more research before you start to reach out to people and really know what you're talking about. If people feel that you know what you're talking about and you have confidence, they're going to really gravitate towards you. So for me to prospect new leads like that, I have a lot of confidence to do that. So people that are starting out don't. And then for referrals, I mean, my track record speaks for itself. A lot of referrals come from, like I said, my circle of influence, my wife. My wife, knows a lot of successful people. So where they're doctors, they're dentists, they're orthodontists, they're lawyers. So where they're at a higher echelon. I did one deal for one of the people in her circle. So where he was really impressed. And it was on a $1.6 million home. I did a really good job for them, and I threw them a really big housewarming party. I hired a private chef, and did everything, and I got a lot of referrals from that. Just that one client, I might have got $5 or $6 million in referrals from it.
Well worth the cost of whatever the private chef. Yeah. You deal with some of these really high volume properties. What is it like marketing as a listing agent? You always want to market the properties. What's it like marketing? Is there a different strategy marketing a $3 million listing versus like a $600,000 or $700,000 home?
Absolutely, it's a good question. So the difference is on some, I have, like I said, I have a couple that are really high-end homes right now that are like 2.5 million. So when I do marketing for something like that, I'll do a broker's open, or I'll spend a certain amount of money. You'll have a budget of what you want to spend on marketing and advertising. I did like this really cool drone video. Now there was a guy called Flywheel that does these drones where he flies through the house, or they're like $600-700. Sometimes you're not going to spend that on a $200 or a $400 listing, but on a $2 million listing, you're going to spend that in the marketing. And just different things, like for certain specialty homes like that, I'll reach out to Philadelphia Magazine and get that, a home featured in Philadelphia Magazine. On that echelon, those kind of sellers want to see that you're going the extra mile to really represent their property.
Is it more formulaic? How you determine how much you're going to spend on hard acres, and kind of like tiers. So it's like it's 500,000 to 1 million, and then to.
I try to do, it's a good question. I try to do the same for properties that are 500,000 or 600,000. But obviously you have to have a budget for every property you want to sell. If you don't, you're gonna run out of your budget. You have to have an advertising and marketing budget for each quarter is what I try to do. So all depending on what listings are in each quarter, I try to allocate a certain amount to each house. But yes, it would be based on the sales price.
Is it to assert yourself into flow and I see, for example, like set hit on those really big games that you want to see? How competitive is that?
When you say competitive, I mean anybody can pay for marketing. That's all what you make on it. I have a relationship with one of the writers of Philadelphia Magazine where I'll reach out to him and when I have certain very unique properties. Not every property that I have, some that are very unique. Like I have one now that's an architect's house that I've done business with. It's a personal house. But that was something where I reached out to where they're not going to accept everything you send over. And that's something we don't pay for, but there are things where you do pay for certain ads and social media or marketing and stuff like that. And like I said, you just have to have a budget of which ones, how much you want to spend. I have people that reach out all the time from different media outlets that say, hey, you want to advertise with us? Of course, send over the budget, let us know what it is. And then I'll send it to my marketing team and say, hey, how much do we have left in the budget for this?
Do you, for your different listings, do you ever have different commission structures, where, all right, if I'm going to take 6%, you'll get this. If I'm going to take 8%, you'll get this, anything like that?
I do. For certain clients, if they're purchasing a home and buying a home at the same time, I will give them some sort of reduction when I go to sell their house. So right now I was representing a buyer in the suburbs for $3 million. She was using me as a buyer. Like, this is what we're referral. So there's a good referral to get. And she just gave me the listing on her house for $2 million. So instead of taking a full commission, I reduced it by 0.5%. So it all depends on the client and the relationship that I have with them. Sometimes I don't reduce my commission at all. It all depends on what the situation is. If it calls for it, I will, but in most instances, I don't. That is basically your salary. You don't want to give away your salary, but again, it all depends on the relationship you have with each buyer and seller. There always is a little negotiation there.
How important would you say relationships with other real estate agents is to your business?
Very important. We all have to work with each other. You want to maintain a good relationship with other realtors. You never know, you're going to have to do another deal with that realtor, and vice versa. You want to have that reputation out there where you're willing to get it done, and they're going to want to work with you.
In that same vein, do you a lot of people who in the higher echelon circles, networking is a huge thing. How much time do you devote to networking events, both real estate centric and otherwise, and how much business do you find you generate from those?
So I try to go to at least one networking event a week. When I first started, I was going to like 2 or 3 before I had kids. Now I have kids, I can't go to that one. But I try to go to one a week. And network with a lot of realtors that are in my space, a lot of realtors that have the same type of listings that I do. And I ask questions. How many showings do you get? Do you think you're priced right? Like I just listed a house for 1.9 million 2 days ago. Before I listed that for sale, I went around and spoke to 2 or 3 realtors that had all the $2 million listings in that area and said, hey, how much action are you getting? How many showings are you getting? Do you have any offers? So after doing that, and I had the listing appointment with my seller, I gave him all the information. I said, hey, these houses aren't moving. They're all listed too much. And he listened to me and he listed it under every. Not by much, but just enough to where he's getting a lot of showings right away. And hopefully we'll have an offer in another week or so. Not hopefully.
Yeah. What's up?
Have you found, of course, there's new faces that, over the years, people come into the business and do this all the time.
consistently, have you been like working the same set of agents and contacts over time that have been making your deals like, hey, Jim, it's great to do this 12 deal with you over 10 years, or so constantly new people that are doing this?
It's a lot of, it all depends on what echelon you're in. When you have big developments like I do, where it's 15 homes or 20 homes, you get to meet a lot of different realtors. So it all depends on what the price point of that is. If they're $500,000 homes, you're going to meet all the realtors that are in that area, or most of the realtors that are in that echelon of that price point. Right. You get to the higher ones where it's like $1 million to $1 million to $2 million to $3 million. It's a smaller group of realtors that represent those type of people. So you're seeing more repetition when it gets to a higher echelon, which is less people at that price point.
But do you still see like a trend of dealing with the same people? You see now have the 20% of the
I do.
Of the market, so it's like
It's a little that philosophy was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Yes, now there's way more realtors today than there was back then. True. So now it's more diverse. You're seeing a lot more, a lot of different realtors for a lot of different, people that have different relationships. But yes, I do still see a lot of the same realtors in some of the transactions like that.
Doing business, with such, high volume listings and high profile, clients, how do you handle when someone approaches you about listing a house that isn't quite up to the price point that you would usually like? Is that something that you would make time for, or is that something that you have people that you refer that to? And how do you handle those conversations of, I'm not the right agent for you, but?
I really haven't had that many circumstances. I did have someone, actually my zoning attorney, refer me someone that had a bunch of homes up in North Philadelphia, which obviously I don't sell a lot of homes in North Philadelphia, for like 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, where yes, I gave it to someone who was on my team, and I said, here, you're not that busy, you're just starting out. I went through the whole thing with them. I said, let's list these together. I want you to learn. So yes, there's different stuff to where I'm never going to turn down something. I'm always going to try to give a referral to someone else that might be in that space. Like I just got a referral from someone that was in Lancaster a couple of days ago. She called me up. She said, I saw you on Facebook or Instagram. You look like a very knowledgeable agent in Philadelphia. I would like to give you a referral for someone that's trying to buy a 4-unit or a 3-unit up to 900,000. And I said, I would love to give you a referral. Please send it over. So in that case, she had the knowledge to where she knew she wasn't an expert in Philadelphia. And she said, let me find somebody that is. This way I'll make my clients happy. So I've done that before. I've sent deals to Florida where for crazy amounts, like 4 to 5 million, where I got a referral. Because I had a really high-end client that wanted a specific property where I wasn't an expert in that space. And I sent it, gave the referral. And, you don't want to give those kind of deals away, but it's in the best interest of your client sometimes to do that.
Sir.
Go ahead, I'm listening. How do you select your referral partner in other states?
Sometimes I'll call Christopher Stevens and I'll ask him, hey, who's the best agent? Find me a good agent in KW in this area. And sometimes he'll give me a referral. And then sometimes I'll reach out to some of my contacts in South Florida too that I know and say, hey, who's a good guy down there that knows this area or knows this specific area? And I'll just do some research before I'm actually going to hand over a client to someone.
You talked about not, wanting to make sure you're not the smartest guy in the room and having people, that you can learn from. What is the next thing that you are looking to learn, and who do you go to for those things?
Well, like I said, I'm trying to get more into bigger apartment buildings where the development is 50 units, 75, 80, 90, 100 units. There is a gentleman that I've been friends with for a long time that runs a big development company in the city. I try to have dinner with him once a week and pick a brain on different stuff that I'm looking at. And thank God that I'm good friends with him. He gives me some really good advice to move forward, and sometimes I'll purchase it.
Have you ever used coaching in your business? And if so, like, what has that done for you?
So I haven't used a lot of coaching. I've done a lot of stuff on my own. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned from a lot of my mistakes and my failures. I wish I would have used a lot of coaching in the beginning. I went after, I was so aggressive when I first started. I didn't utilize the education or the coaching as much as I should have. In hindsight, looking back, it really would have helped me. I just didn't have that mindset when I first started. It's more now that there's a lot more coaching and you know, now I really reach out to a few key players that I'm very familiar and confident with and ask for advice here and now, you know, here and there, for a lot of different things that I did, not just real estate, just in life, you know, for family and stuff like that. There's, you know, as I've grown and I've met so many bigger real estate people and developers throughout the city, I've established a lot of really good relationships with type of people.
You mentioned your, Zach, you have a question?
I did. Matt, would you attribute your success? I mean, you were objectively successful.
Thank you.
Would you attribute your success more to your individual skill or to the connections that you made and leveraged throughout your time in the industry?
I would say it's a combination of both. When I first started, I started at a big brokerage. I remember my split was like 50%. And I was like, just, and again, at the beginning I had, you know, I had a good finance background where I brought in a big deal right away. It was like 16 counties. And then, you know, I called around, I leveraged my relationships and I said, who else could I get a better deal from than I'm getting? And that's when I met Van Aller and Gaurav here. And to be in a room with those two individuals, they have a lot of influence and they were very pivotal to my success. And it was like a good yin and yang to where I didn't have enough experience, but I had just enough to get to the next level and actually make a nice deal happen and find them.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So I work here in the administrative capacity. I'm working on getting my license. For somebody who's interested in being in the spaces that you work, you know, geared towards more of the luxury stuff, the new development, what would you recommend somebody who's looking to get into that space of real estate?
Whenever, that's a good question. Whenever you're starting out in real estate, I mean, I know when I was starting out, I really wasn't thinking, hey, I'm going to be representing big luxury homes. My thing was I wanted to do developments because when I purchased my first couple of homes that were new construction, I saw the whole process of everything unfolding from architecture to the design to picking things, you know, tile and stuff like that. To where I did all that with two homes that I designed and built myself, and I really liked it. So when I first started, that's what I wanted to get into. So once I started to get into that, Philadelphia started to change. It started to become more and more luxury. There wasn't a lot of luxury real estate 10 years ago in Philadelphia. It was just starting to, like, you know, touch the surface. So, you know, gradually, little by little, as I did more transactions, like every transaction you're going to do, you're going to learn something, you're going to get more confidence. So every transaction, it just propelled me to the next one, to where it was like the next level. And, you know, again, my circle of influence, when I met the people that were at that price point that were looking to buy $1 million home or a $2 million home, I would talk to the people that were in that space and get advice. One of my first deals that I did was with Mike McCann on 22nd and Lansing. I didn't really know anything about 100-year-old brownstones. So I learned a lot. You know what I mean? It's a learning process. Every transaction, you want to learn something. And then you're just going to take it to the next one. And I got referrals from that. And little by little, I got into the luxury market that way. And then I found a deal that was was a big project. It was a luxury project that I sat with the architect because they weren't selling right away. This might have been like 8 or 9 years ago. And I said, we need to change the plans. Let's sit down and go through them. We want them changing from one phase to the next. And a lot of the changes we made were very successful. And I really got into the luxury market, selling a lot of homes in one aspect of it, one homes. So I really established a name for myself and did a few projects like that. To where now I had people reaching out to me, I see you sold so many houses over here. We have something we want to sell in that neighborhood, and it's a $2 million place. So it's not easy to get to that point. It probably took me 10 years to get to that point.
Makes sense. So it's just trial and error, basically.
Well, again, it's trial and error, but it's about what relationships you have too, but how you're going to leverage those relationships right away. But yes, a lot of it is trial and error, but you have a lot more education now than you did before. So a lot more, resources at your fingertips if you're here at Keller Williams. When I was at, the condo shop, when we first started, it was a little brokerage. I used to sit with Rob and ask him questions. We used to go back and forth with stuff. And again, we were just both learning. We didn't have, one of the best, realtors in the city working with us. Like I said, people you surround yourself with. That's why I try to mentor a couple people in my office. Anybody wants to, needs advice, they tell them, reach out. So again, it all depends on who you surround yourself with and how you're going to get, and have a plan of how you're going to get to that point. Welcome.
The event, when you first started, you said it's all trial and error. How do you handle? How did you handle making mistakes? And your client's frustrated with what's.
When I first started, I did a lot of research about new construction before I took on a project of that magnitude. I do trial and error. There's certain things you're going to learn that are not, and you're going to fail at, but again, you have to make sure. As long as you're selling homes and you're keeping people happy, you're going to keep it moving along. You just have to set goals for yourself of what you need to do next in order to be successful. So where even if you have a couple little failures, as long as you have sales and you're consistent and you're getting deals closed, you're going to be fine. It's when you're not, you're making mistakes and you're not getting deals closed. That's the problem.
Do
you have any morning routine that follows morning?
Sorry,
Morning routine. What do you do in the morning? The morning 9 to 2. That's what you do 9 to 2 a.m.
Well, no, yeah. I drop my kids off in the morning and I go through my routine. I go through all my emails in the morning. I follow up with everybody. If I have showings that day, every day is different for me. At night, once I put my kids to bed at 9 o'clock, I'm looking at my computer and going through emails for the next day. So you just gotta have to have a routine and a good balance. And I have a lot of people in my office that support me. I have a full-time assistant. I have a full-time marketing associate. I have a advertising and marketing team. There's a lot of resources, like I said, here at Keller Williams that I didn't have in other corporations when we first started out. So I have a lot of those resources now where I don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. I'm not making open house flyers for my weekends. I'm not making, I'm not doing all that. I have people that are doing that for me. So it's a lot easier when you have that team around you.
We were able to hire
So again, that was one of the biggest factors of me joining a team. I was an individual agent at this big brokerage, where once I took on a big project, I knew I needed a team around me to help me be successful with it. So it was a learning curve. It took me like about probably 12 months to almost probably about a year to really get comfortable of letting them do a lot more work that I was like going through, creating everything. It's not that easy to where you have to give up control on certain things.
It's not necessarily specific to the real estate sphere, but you talked about your keeping a unit in each of your projects and wishing that your 20-year-old self knew not to sell your real estate. What else is a part of your wealth building plan, and what would your recommendation be, outside of whole real estate? What other recommendations do you have to anyone who maybe hasn't even thought about starting a wealth plan yet?
Recruiting. The way KW is structured, recruiting, a lot of people make life recruiting. I really haven't recruited enough people, I think. because I've been so focused on investing my money in real estate and the next project we're going to do. So a lot of my investments are in real estate, in development, and holding on to real estate. So where another avenue or another stream should be, where I want to be in the future, is recruiting for people for Hotel Williams, to where you're going to get a residual from that.
I swear I didn't pay him to say that.
It's true. There's guys that make a lot of money just recruiting. I mean, that's something you have to do every day. So, like it's anything, it depends on how much time you're going to dedicate to it.
Yeah, you seem to be very, very cognizant of your niche and your one thing. Do you have something that you talk about your days being a little bit varied? Is there something that like every day I'm going to devote energy to this because this is the most important thing I can do for my business?
I mean, at this point, I have a lot of different listings, and I try to dedicate a marketing strategy to each one of them every day. Because I have a lot of different ones. I have stuff that's 500,000, 600,000. Then I have stuff that's 1 million, 2 million. I have, even have one that's 2.6 million. So there's a lot of different buyers and sellers, and I try to come up with a strategy for each.
Anyone else have any more questions for Matt? We're a little bit early, but I think there's a very focused nuggets of wisdom there. Zach, can you full screen this so we can just make sure there's no Zoom questions? Doesn't look like there are any. That was from Adam's session. All right, well, no one has anything else. Thank you so much, Matt, for agreeing to do this. I know it was very short notice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. He's so excited that she doesn't have to wait for her class to start.
Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm trying to.
And you set that up. Well, it's a little bit of it doesn't have to be with children's.
No, it's not what this is. So I manually go in and create this right without getting this. Now, what I would probably do with more of my meetings are going to be over Zoom like that. I would create in Zoom one recurring meeting and then just have that link and use that for any of them. Because I think you can even drop in, like you can have a preset location or a preset description and when you're creating an appointment you can put in there. And I would just use the same link for everything.
Yes. Right, I got the Zoom before, but I don't know. I'm really concerned. And I know that I'm reading.
Yeah, and I think the waiting room is the solution there. Yeah, and yeah. I think it would be something that annoys you for a couple weeks and then you just get used to it, get over it. Honestly, like not trying to be big about it. It's just one of those things where once you're in the habit of it, you won't even. Yeah, I try very hard to make my appointments in person. So I haven't devoted as much energy to figuring out like the Zoom element of it.
Whereas now, communities that we talk to brokers. And I'm not going to talk about communities.
I do think you need to look at doing like group onboardings, at least for a certain production level.
I agree, but my hesitancy with that is there's a lot of individuals that ways to not getting this. So it's this action. Because if I'm doing even one a week, if that person decides to come next week versus this week, that week, then that's we get it the first time.
Yes, and this is the whole of the use of it, but yes, and if you are getting busier and booking out more onboardings, and the first onboarding appointment you have available for someone is 2 weeks out, that's going to push things more. Like when at a scalable level, there's more chance for delay doing everyone individually than it is doing group. But we can also set an expectation. It's like, yeah, instead of giving a choice, it is, this is the day for the onboarding. You know, and if they say like, oh, I absolutely can't make that, then you can talk about, all right, well, you know, you can cover this day or this time instead. But, you know, I think you just say like, all right, Wednesday at 2 is the onboarding. Yeah, you need to be there. This is very important.
I see the merits of what you're saying. It's because as things stand for career people, I'm telling them if these appointment times don't come, I would do it. Yeah.
And I think there's still room to make exception for those edge cases. But I think if you create and operate in the system now, then it's going to be easier than trying to get the hang of it when we're busier. And if you go into it setting that expectation up front, you know, and then you have someone saying that doesn't work for my work schedule and do it on an edge case basis instead of giving them the option. I feel like there's people who are taking advantage of that option who don't need to be. And if you don't give them the option until they tell you I explicitly need it, I think you're going to find that there's a lot fewer of those.
That's fair. I mean, no,
yeah. Yeah, I think that it just, you know, if we are hoping to get to months, now if we're expecting those 40 a month, you know, even if you have someone working with you, but still, like you need something stable.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are and so that really hurt. So we
yeah, well, that's like I'm not only by my ass. We have a lot of team leaders across the country. Like this is how they go. Especially with the new system, because you know they want to be in front of people while they're doing this. Yes. So
What's going on? Good.
So he is like. You gotta get that.
Yeah. All this.
It is all one. Later. I'm gonna get to the next one. I like that idea. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
No, I'm going to teach class with my assistant there, but I just found out you were talking to the owner, and now the lenders all said that she's valuable though. The owner wasn't even supposed to be there.
yeah.
I know, but he's not supposed to be there and talking to you as the appraiser. It's like not okay. Like defeats the.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you. Then you go out and talk to you. So my assistant's there. That's why I sent her. Because I'm turning on the Zoom to teach class right now. Can you talk to Alex so I can talk to her afterwards? She's there.
Okay.
No, I teach class in 7 minutes. I'm getting a Zoom thing set up. I can have a conversation, but I sent my assistant to get this taken care of for me, so we were like being efficient. That's okay. Okay. I guess I guess the lender just called me and was freaking out at me, and I was like, I'm not even there. My assistant's there, and I don't. Yeah, they literally just called me. I was like, come down the elevator, come teach my class, and so that's why I'm like, because they talked to my assistant. Cause she was there, I don't know, I'm not there, I'm in Philadelphia. So the reason why I'm a little concerned is I'm like, why are they? So I don't understand myself as much as you know, because I wasn't there, but no, I see, when I finished teaching my.